Welcome to the Making Sense podcast. This is Sam Harris. Well, today I want to share a clip from the second season of Absolutely Mental, the podcast I've been doing with Ricky Gervais. Many of you will have heard the first season in whole or in part, and I think the second season is actually better. We have hit our stride here, I think. The genesis of this podcast is that Ricky and I would have an occasional phone call, and it occurred to me that these conversations were fun enough that we should record them and see what happened. So the podcast itself really is virtually indistinguishable from telephone conversations we were having anyway. Hence the conceit of making it a phone call. Obviously, we're aware that we're recording it and it's a podcast, but to a remarkable degree, it really is the kind of conversation we were going to have anyway, which is unusual and a lot of fun. So for many months, I've had the pleasure of rolling out of bed on a Saturday morning and getting on the line with Ricky, only to be reminded that with civilization unraveling all around us, he's primarily afraid of spiders. And as you'll hear, he is very good company. So now this is a clip from Season 2, Episode 2, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you want to hear the rest of the series, both seasons are available at absolutelymental.com. Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Although I was just anesthetized, which doesn't happen often, and that's an interesting experience. When's the last time you were put out?
I don't think I've ever had a general since I was about maybe 10 to have a tooth out.
This wasn't a general. You got a general to have a tooth out?
Well, we used to. I mean,
Wow.
in the late 60s, it was gas.
Whenever you get one of these urchins who are covered with coal dust, you just put them right out to take their teeth out?
No, and I'd always wake up crying because I don't know what it was. I assumed it was would have been not some sort of mix of nitrous oxide.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a general, but that would be.
Oh, well, no,
among
they used to
dentists.
No, I was unconscious.
Yeah, no, I guess so. The distinction between a general and what might be called a twilight anesthesia, or anything other than a general, is that in a general you're not breathing under your own power anymore.
Oh, really?
You're that deep, and there may be gradations that I'm not aware of. I'm not an anesthesiologist, but the
so they really put
you
everything
can be
to
completely
sleep.
unconscious, but still it's not a general. It's a much lighter anesthesia.
I've never had a general.
But you've never had
you didn't
proper
have one.
surgery. No, I had
No.
I had the glorious intervention of a colonoscopy, and so they give you propofol, which is what Michael Jackson was using recreationally to sleep with his crazy doctor, which wound up killing him apparently.
Is that why you went for it? Because celebrity endorsement. You said whatever I want to. Do you wear one glove as well?
Yes, I wore a sequin glove.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So,
everything's okay,
hold on,
but
then.
it's amazing to have the lights turned out that emphatically. It's certainly unlike going to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think? So it's deeper than your unconscious sleeping self. Even it's deeper than that, is it?
Yeah, well,
That's what you
presumably it must be, because I'm pretty sure I would wake up if someone was sticking a camera up.
Of course, yeah.
One always hopes.
I sort of meant, yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, but in sleep, doesn't the body freeze itself so you can't get injured? So when you're imagining you're fighting and running, you're deadly still. You're sort of frozen. Is that true?
Yeah, during REM sleep you are, and there's a disorder of REM sleep where you're basically you kind of wake up but you're still frozen, so you can feel like that's the explanation for many kinds of like UFO abduction experiences and other weirdness. I
Well,
mean,
that usually ends with a finger up the arse as
yeah,
well,
that does.
doesn't it?
Strange
Just
coincidence
not.
there. Yes.
It's just not a human finger, a really long green one. That would wake you up.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that would that would wake you up. Well, I mean, this conversation makes my question seem a bit tame. I was going to ask you, although it's probably in the ballpark.
Mm.
Do you know about hypnosis and how it works, if it works, and if it works, how does it work? And I mean, I don't mean the mechanics of doing it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
why does it work? First of all, does it work?
Yeah, well, I have very little direct experience with it, although I have one experience that I can describe, which was interesting. So I'm from the literature, I can certainly say that it works for some things on some
Right.
people. I mean, there are people who are there's a spectrum of hypnotizability, and there's
Yeah.
a scale, a Stanford scale of hypnotizability that ranks people based on a test. And I actually had, when I was an undergraduate, I had that test. I was in Psych 101, and they were looking for experimental subjects, and they gave some subset of the class this test.
Oh,
And
there's literally a scientific scale that's been
yeah,
sort of peer reviewed, and that is. Oh wow, I
yeah,
didn't know that.
I think it's at least 50 years old, but it's the Stanford. I think it was a Harvard one too, but it's a Stanford scale of hypnotizability that is the standard. And I forget all of the exercises we had to do, but one stands out in my mind, and this really proved to me that there was something there, because I recall being fairly skeptical that there was anything to this,
Right.
but you're asked to do various things, and then one thing I remember being asked to do was I'll describe the procedure in a second, but you're inducted into the state of hypnosis, and you're given various suggestions. So sort of two parts to hypnosis. There's the induction and then the suggestion phase.
Right.
And one suggestion was a kind of an age regression. We were now told we were now 9 years old, I think it was, and then given a piece of paper and a pen and asked to write the year. And I remember writing the year in 1976 without any arithmetic in my head. I mean, I just wrote it, and then I was asked to sign my name, and without any conscious, I guess could be an unconscious wish to comply with this thing, but at the time it really felt like an automaticity. I signed my name in precisely the bubbly, childlike handwriting that I would have been appropriate to a 9-year-old. It certainly wasn't appropriate to my 18-year-old self. So that regression experience seemed pretty strong to me. And there were like 9 other things. I think it was a scale of 10, and I was a 9 in terms of hypnotizability. It might have been a scale of 12.
So is that suggests to me that you're very weak-willed?
No,
So
it
what is the
shouldn't.
scale to do? So the scale presumably relates to a characteristic. It's not just a random thing. Have they looked into why some people are more easily hypnotized? Like, joking aside, could it be, more complicity? Could it be, that you believe it more, or that you're naive, or you're cynical, or are there more firm characteristics that would suggest you're a 1 or a 10?
I don't actually know. I think there are other things that it's correlated with, like having a fantasy life or having kind of vivid daydreaming. Like you can really recall what your daydreaming is about. I don't actually know how much is understood about differences in hypnotizability, but the
And would that be a structure of the brain? Would that be a type of brain? If it was that, say, I won't hold you to it, but if it was that you have, more a vivid imagination, is that a type? Is that a brain type that some people have more vivid imaginations than others?
well, I think we could probably get at it from the side of what's happening when people are seem to be successfully hypnotized. And there has been some neuroimaging work on hypnosis, and the place where it's actually where the effect of hypnosis is, I think, least in dispute, is with pain suppression. I mean, there are people who have undergone surgeries, real surgeries with no anesthetic, but hypnosis. I mean, this has been attested to for a very long time, but I recently had someone on my podcast who's been working on this in his lab, and yeah, many people have undergone surgery under hypnosis, and then people use hypnosis as a adjunct to anesthesia. They'll be given, let's say, a local when they might have been given more of a twilight anesthesia, and so it's just a local
Okay,
plus
so that's
hypnosis.
okay. Well, that's very interesting. So tell me what happens there. So supposing that works and they're not screaming. Now, are they feeling pain?
Well,
Now,
no, I mean, they're
they're not
not.
feeling it at all. So they're not suppressing. They're not going, I don't mind this pain.
Right.
They're
Right.
going, it's something's not getting to them. But that's impossible, isn't it? Because isn't pain a literal physical thing of synapse jumps and
It
isn't it?
seems. I mean, again, I don't think the work here is definitive, because I think this topic is somewhat in ill repute among scientists. I mean, I don't think most neuroscientists are seriously considering focusing on hypnosis as a topic. But I mean, the neuroimaging work that's been done that I'm aware of has found that actually hypnosis is blocking the painful stimuli from even registering in sensory cortex.
Okay, so hold on. How is that possible? So they're under hypnosis, whatever that is, right? So they're under, okay, they're hypnotized, whatever that is, whether it's some sort of compliance or subconscious thing, and literally the pain isn't getting to the pain receptors, or I can't.
Well,
I
so
can't imagine.
there can be
That's
downward.
incredible.
There can be downward, top-down modulation of sensory cortex. It's I think probably there's an area in the midline in the frontal lobes called the anterior cingulate cortex, and that shows up in many different paradigms, but it's definitely involved in pain perception, and
Wow.
there are more senior, more executive areas that could inhibit sensory cortex. And yes, I mean
Wow.
that seems to be
I'd
what
still say
we've seen in neuroimaging.
even if that was working and it was going well, I still like to think a finger up my arse would bring me out of that.
Well, you'll never know until you try.
And the doctors are furious. Why did you do that? It was working. Why did you do that?
Well, but
That's
there's an interesting
fascinating,
thing
though.
here, because it's not clear whether hypnosis is a state, because it's definitely advertised as being a state that gets induced, and it's on the basis of that state that you then become suggestible. But it's possible that the suggestion itself is really the whole story, or much of it. For instance, I think there have been experiments done where the exact same induction and suggestion process is happening, but in one paradigm it's called hypnosis, and in another it's called a relaxation exercise. And it has a very different effect on people, just the framing of it. I mean, the people thinking they're going to get hypnotized matters, as opposed to thinking they're just relaxing.
Right. Well, but that's why I can't get by. I know it's all about perception, but I still think of pain as a literal objective thing, like electricity jumping and hurting, and you're
Right.
whether you like it or not, you feel something, and that is what a pain is. But if it's a pain, no, it's not like that. It's
Just I mean, yes, the pain signal, let's say at your finger, right? It's the same. It has to be the same from the finger on in, but at a certain point, what you're imagining is pure sensation is being modulated by the rest of what the brain is doing, right? And it becomes susceptible to significant influence and even cancellation. And where in the network of the brain that's happening, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if, I mean, maybe someone has a good sense of it now, but I'm just not aware of it. But it may still be somewhat mysterious. But this relates to the placebo effect, which is also well demonstrated for pain and for many other things, but it's also not understood. But it's clearly a belief-based process that gets started is medically efficacious. I mean, it becomes a challenge to design drugs that beat placebos in many cases because they're so effective.
Okay, so even though there is an actual physical act to do with the laws physics and electricity and all those things, it then become how you perceive it in your brain, and it becomes subjective. I suppose that's like if you put your foot into a boiling hot bath by mistake, for a split second, you think it's cold. You think there's something wrong here, and you go, oh, and then you go, no, it's hot.
Well, it's just extreme.
So you
Yeah.
haven't had time to work. Okay, okay. I think I understand that.
The point to take on here, I think, is that a belief is also a physical act in your brain. It's no less a physical act than you getting hit with a hammer.
Of course.
Like I said, the man is good company. That could have been the name of the podcast, in fact. But we went with the very British, Absolutely Mental. And if you enjoy both our company, you can find more of it at absolutelymental.com.